Hello, you wonderful people. So for today's video, I want to talk about the trailer that just came out for Final Fantasy XVI. I think it was part of like a PS5 event that I didn't watch at the time of me recording this. I just randomly stumbled across something talking about Final Fantasy XVI. I'm like, whoa, and looked up the trailer and watched it. Which, side note, if you have not seen the trailer already, I'll include a link to it in the description down below. But obviously, I'm going to reiterate some stuff I, said in a comment, on the trailer. First and foremost, it's interesting looking at obviously the aesthetic of it. The thing that immediately came to my mind was Drakengard, just because obviously because of the knights and everything, but also just like how bloody it seems. I feel like Final Fantasy isn't that bloody. Obviously from occasions here and there things can be bloody, but I feel like I've never seen a Final Fantasy look that bloody before. So it definitely reminds me of Drakengard and just how bloody it seems like, but just also the aesthetic of it. Obviously it's very, Final Fantasy to be taking place in the Middle Ages. Obviously in the different games it takes place in different time frames, but obviously this feels like it's a little more like, back to, more often than not you'll find yourself in the Middle Ages, with knights and dragons type of situation in most Final Fantasies. Not every Final Fantasies, but most stuff. But the thing that I talked about the most was also like the combat. It seemed, at least to me, it seemed a lot more fast-paced than something like obviously it's like, it seems like it's built off of 15 and 7's and, Kingdom Hearts in that regard, of just how fast-paced it does. It seems like they're definitely leaning more into like the very character action combat-wise. Because I'd actually made a video a while back wondering what Final Fantasy XVI was going to be like combat-wise, because I figured they probably weren't going to go back to turn-based just with what they had done at that time. I think at the time maybe recording that 7 Remake had come out. I don't even know if information about 7 Remake had came out at the time when I did that video. I was just definitely basing it on more so 15, but it seems like obviously we're kind of going in that route of continuing that route of how they handled 15 and remake 7 Remake. But what I also talked about is at one point you see the character kind of casting fire magic like rapidly, and I'm like, because of how fast he's firing it, it doesn't seem like it's necessarily the same as like 7 Remake or 15, because obviously like there was a you could somewhat cast fast like that during 15, but it was more so like multicasting you'd have to do. And in 7 obviously you get the slowdown, so either because that didn't even seem like I don't know, it didn't seem necessarily like a quick command like you could like in 7 Remake and Kingdom Hearts, where you can just like use shortcuts to cast spells or something like that. So it didn't necessarily seem like that. It just how rapid, at least it seemed from the trailer, and just like the movements of the battles. And the thing that immediately came to my mind was like, it definitely seems more like Nier Automata, or Automata, however you want to say it. It seems more aesthetically in that vein. Especially like I said, because I'm sure you could probably have like a dedicated button maybe to like magic spells, but also just like the movement. It definitely like reminds you very much of like Noctis's movements in 15, like the teleporting around, but you can definitely feel like a Nier vibe, kind of like a 2B vibe when with it and everything. But it definitely it leans more towards a Nier vibe, especially because it seems like there's only one character you're controlling. Technically when you break it down, you're technically only controlling one character, Noctis, in 15, but obviously like patches and enhancements and stuff later on eventually led to you being able to switch to the other characters in combat and being able to control them. So there's that. But just from what we saw, it just seemed like you're always controlling one character, because the main character you're following, it seems like you're following him. It looked like it's the same character, not unless I'm mistaken, but it looks like you're controlling the same character, just older. Like he's got scars and just a little more facial hair, and his hair's a little bit longer. It seems like obviously he's like, oh, I went through some shit, so we're probably going to be time skipping a little bit. Like the younger version will probably play that for a while, or not unless they do a thing of like you're bouncing back and forth. Who knows how they're going to do it, but just what we saw, it seemed dope. Obviously, you fighting like a Marlboro at one point in time, and just like I said, the fast movements all around. It also seems like there's also a little bit of 15 in the sense of like, it almost looks like there's finishers, because at one point he comes over and he stabs an enemy that's on the ground, and like obviously like Noctis kind of has that a little bit in 15, where he can like stealth kill certain, during certain sections he can like stealth kill enemies like that. So that's what it kind of reminds me of. But it looks like it's like, oh, you knocked this enemy down and it's in a weak enough state that maybe you have a skill, or just it's a natural thing that you're able to just finish them off. Just based on what we saw, like I said, it seemed dope. But obviously we get a little here and there about kind of some of the story. It seems like kind of like this also kind of ran through my mind because I don't know why specifically this, but the character models kind of remind me of Type Zero for whatever reason. I can't tell you why, just when I see them, I immediately think Type Zero. I think maybe just everything that's kind of going on, the war and everything. I mean, to be fair, there's been wars in plenty of Final Fantasies, but it definitely reminds me a little bit more of, I mean, I guess seeing them on Chocobos kind of slightly reminds me of 10, because, you know, because obviously there was the Chocobo Knights. I believe that was her names, and there was also God, I'm blanking on it. Final Fantasy 12, there was a lot of fighting on Chocobos, but it's hard to say whether the main, because the main character, it seems like he's a shield to this kid named Joshua, kind of like his guardian and stuff like that, but then later on it seems like he's with like a knight, some knights, or maybe, it doesn't necessarily seem like a mercenary group, but they have these marks on his face because he's like, people like us don't, you know, we have orders, we follow them, and he touches a mark, and it's like, so it must be like a sign of like, you belong to somebody, you serve their will, whatever their will is, you'll do it. But like I said, it just seems like a war nation type of thing, fighting over crystals. Obviously that's come up in other Final Fantasies before, and obviously it seems like we have the summons in this universe known as icons, which obviously their names change, you know, depending on the game. Some games just refer to them as summons. Obviously you have 8 where they're GFs, 10 Aeons, 13 Eidolons. I forgot what they're called. It's been a little bit since I played 15. I don't remember what they're called in 15. But obviously it seems like the icons, I guess, represent obviously the crystals and stuff like that. So I guess they're kind of like every particular country or kingdom or whatever, their particular guardian maybe. Obviously we see Shiva, we see Titan, which is interesting because I feel like Titan looks a lot like Titan from FF15 aesthetically. We also see Ifrit and Phoenix, which I don't think Phoenix has been in the Final Fantasy games in a while, to my recollection. I feel like that's one of those ones that kind of pops up every once in a while. You might see it, you might not. Like Carbuncle, I feel like Carbuncle isn't always, you know, one of them, but regardless. There was even one fight part where the main protagonist was fighting a dragoon, which was pretty dope. It kind of reminds me of, I'm already blanking on her name too. What was it, Aurelia? Was that her name? The dragoon that's like an enemy and somewhat of an ally in 15. Definitely moveset wise, it definitely reminded me of her, especially when it's the armored dude is in the sky. And the fact is, it seems like that's a class of soldier. It's not just like, oh, like there's one specific dragoon, kind of like in her case. It's like, nah, there are probably like a whole bunch of them. They'll probably become like regular, and probably start off as a boss, but then become like regular enemies. But it just, I mean, I thought what I saw was pretty dope. Obviously, I'd love to kind of, you know, I'm a big Final Fantasy fan, and so I'm always excited for a new one. I am curious to kind of learn about this world, and I obviously do know at the time we were recording this, I haven't read anything about it. This trailer kind of completely surprised me because I haven't been keeping up with anything, so I didn't know, you know, there was any hint of anything related to FF16 coming out, you know. So either way, I'm curious to kind of dive into it more, see obviously like a lot of the things I brought up, like whether they change or stay the same in future, you know, reveals and stuff like that. Like I said, like for example, it just seems like you're only one character, but maybe you do eventually get a party. I feel like it leans probably more so around the only one character thing, but you know, ultimately, like I said, we'll have to see. Obviously, these are just my thoughts and some of the things going through my mind. I'd love to get to know your thoughts in the comments down below. What did you think about the trailer? Did you like it? Did you dislike it? What are some things you saw in it that you thought were interesting? What are some things you want to see in Final Fantasy 16? Like I said, let me know all your thoughts. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.